What is up, my fellow sports fans? This is a really exciting time. I thought I was going to be waiting a bit to do an NFL episode. I know the combine's going on. I'm pumped about that. But let's be honest, you can talk about the combine now or any time until the NFL draft. Not that much changes. You see what they do. It's not going to be like a whole big difference about what goes down. So I thought I'd be maybe talking about being a new dad. My kid came out a week ago, March 5th. Jackson Dante McKinney, so that's exciting. I'm a little scattered because I'm completely sleep deprived. So I thought I'd be talking about that. Maybe some NBA. We got my fantasy baseball draft coming up. So I thought I'd be talking about some of those things. But boom, Panthers had other things in mind. They went and made a huge trade for 1.1. So before I get into the value of the Panthers trade, I thought what was going to happen is someone closer was going to make the trade, like the Colts at 1-4. You know, they're a team that wants to win now, like the Texans, the Cardinals. Some of those other teams don't really expect to win, but the Colts been in a bad division for a while, and they had Andrew Luck fall out of their hands. Then they went and got Wentz. They got Matt Ryan. Like, they clearly want a quarterback who can win now. So if they're at 1-4, it wouldn't have taken that much to get to 1-1. Then again, there are 4 quarterback prospects, so maybe they are okay with having any of the 4. But in order to properly analyze any transaction, whether it's a trade in football or buying a car, it may seem like a good deal to get a Porsche for $10,000. But if it went for $5,000 last year, you probably should wait until the price adjusts or pay less. So you do have to look at previous returns. So we're going to go all the way back to 1995. Ki-Jana Carter went 1.1. Many of you don't know who Ki-Jana Carter is. And even though he went 1-1, that means he had a high potential. If you don't know the name, that means he's not like the Robo QB, someone with super high potential, or like Ryan Leaf, who we all know of as a bust. Ryan Leaf had epic potential, was almost taken over Peyton Manning, and was a bust at 1.2. He was also traded for. But so for you not to know who Ki-Jana Carter is at 101, and he was traded for 1.5, where they took Kerry Collins, guy who played in the league for years, and defensive end Sean King at 36, that's actually a pretty fair value. So they did just get one extra player, a 36 overall pick, but the 36 overall pick is basically a first rounder, and they got a franchise quarterback in Kerry Collins. So if Ki-Jana had panned out, it's a fair value for both teams. Nothing really to go crazy about there. The next one is hilarious. I'd forgotten about it. In 1997, you get a prime. This is probably the reason why coaches aren't allowed to be GMs. The Jets gave Bill Parcells the ability to coach and GM. He had 1-1 overall. The team supposedly, even though they're 1-15, had some pretty decent O-line play. And he's an O-line, D-line coach. He knows about all that. So they needed to get some talent in there, some skill players, some defensive playmakers. So the top player in the draft is obviously Ohio State's Orlando Pace. 6'7", 335 pounds, moves well. Everyone knows that. He trades down to 6 with the Seahawks, only gets a 3rd, 4th, and a 7th. It's because, he's not a quarterback. So, it's an O-lineman, no big deal. At 6, he could have taken Walter Jones. So even though Pace is better, getting an extra 3rd, 4th, and 7th to still get a Hall of Famer Walter Jones is a solid trade. So the value is not good, but you have to look at what's available. So in this draft with the Colts, they don't want to trade up to 1-1 because they're fine at 1-4. So they're fine at 1-6. Not a great trade, solid. He ruins it and then trades down again from 1-6 to 1-8, only gets the 88th overall pick as compensation and gets James Ferrier. Now, a lot of my Madden players from around my age, 32, if you were playing Madden in the 2010s, you remember James Ferrier was the weak link linebacker on that Steelers defense that had James Harrison, Joey Porter, and Jason Gilden. He was the OG veteran captain, but he was not the exciting skill player that Parcells was seeking. He may have been a thumper in college. He may have been more fun back then and in a more hard-nosed era. I'm sure Parcells liked him, but he's not a franchise-changing player. The first trade, not so bad. The second trade is horrific. So then we go to the next year, 1998, Ryan Leaf. This is one of the worst trades ever. So Leaf was 2nd overall, and the Chargers gave up their 3rd overall pick. So they just had to move up 1 pick, and they gave up the 33rd pick as well, which should have been enough right there. They also gave up Eric Metcalf and Patrick Sapp. That's not so bad. They also gave up their 1st-round pick the next year, which turned out to be Studley wide receiver David Boston. So if you look at what happened in 95, to go from 1-1 to 1-5, it took the 36th pick. Then in 98, to go from 1-2 to 1-3, 33rd and 2 players wasn't enough. They got fleeced. And it makes sense. It's a quarterback who's exciting as Manning. So maybe you have to give up more than Ki-Jana Carter. So maybe a couple more seconds and thirds, or a future first. Give up a first in 2000 or 2001 when Leaf has had a chance to excel. But even Peyton Manning threw 26 picks as a rookie. So giving up your first round pick the next year, even if Leaf isn't a bust, that's not going to be a good pick the next year. I mean, the team is picking third overall for a reason. They're not good. Ryan Leaf's not going to come and change that. Peyton Manning couldn't instantly change the Colts. So unless you're a team like the Warriors who gets the second overall pick with Wiseman because players were hurt, usually when you have a pick, one player, especially basketball, one player could change. In the NFL, one player is not going to change everything. So the year when Brady got hurt, if Matt Castle hadn't taken him to 11-5, they could have been in position to take a receiver who could have changed but that's just not the case normally. So that's a bad trade. Speaking of bad trades, we all love this one. Run, Ricky, run. Ricky Williams was taken at 1.5. For the Saints to get him, they had to trade all their picks in 1999. That's 112, their third, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's already bad enough to move up 7 spots. Because you see Walter Jones only give up a third, fourth, and 7th to move from 1-6 to 1-1. So clearly, it's the energy. They're like, I'll give up anything for Ricky. I'll give up anything for Ricky. Managers knew that. Coaches knew that. So they made him give up more. Not only to give up all their picks in 99, they gave up their first and second in 2000. So I am going to go out and say I do believe that the Panthers overpaid a little bit for trading for 1-1. But knowing how bad it's been in the past for players like a running back and Ryan Leaf, who is not a sure thing at all, it could have been a lot worse. 2001, one of my favorite ones, Michael Vick. So this is another one where you have to examine the draft and who's available. Michael Vick went 1-1. Everyone knew how exciting he was, but running quarterbacks weren't as popular back then. So it's quite possible that the Chargers just didn't want him that badly. So the Chargers had 1-1, and they end up getting back 1-5, Tim Dwight, and then also a second the next year and a third in 2001. So Tim Dwight was a very good punt returner and had 7 touchdowns his sophomore year, starting in 8 games. But then in his third year, he only started 1 game. So clearly as a receiver, like, oh, he could be good. But it's like he's 5'8", he starts 8 games, then starts 1, and then they're trading for him. So they're not trading for an impact receiver. They got a 3rd-round pick that year and a 2nd-round pick the next year. So the value is decent, and the 1-5 turned into LaDainian Tomlinson, but just knowing how generational of a talent Mike Vick was, and that Ryan Leaf required a 33rd overall pick and an extra first, I do think they could have gotten more for Vick. I think they could have gotten a bit more, but knowing they got LT, it's not so bad. I'm going to skip ahead in the future 3 more years and do another Chargers trade for a quarterback. No one wants to play in San Diego. It's beautiful down there, but Vick's not going there. Eli Manning refused to go there. Now, people think the Giants won this trade because they got Manning and won 2 championships, whereas Phillip Rivers put up better stats and never won. What people fail to realize is that it was the Giants' defense that stifled Tom Brady. My favorite quote ever is that Brady, when he was talking about beating the Giants, he's like, the Giants are a very strong team. I respect them. Any team could win. And then he was told that Plaxico Burress predicted the Giants. Plaxico predicted they'd win 17-14. And Brady laughed. And they're like, you don't think it's possible? He said, no, the Giants are a good team. They could totally win, but we're not going to score just 14 points. I reversed it. Plaxico predicted 23-17. And then the final score was 17-14. So Brady says there's no way we only score 17, and they end up scoring 14. So we held those unbelievable Patriots to 14 points. We were winning on defense, not on Eli Manning. So the trade was 1-1 for 1-4. The Giants get Eli Manning, and they get Rivers. They also got a 3rd that year. They also got a 5th the next year. People forget they also got our 2005 first, which was Shawne Merriman. Imagine that lethal defense instead of Tuck, Umenyiora, and Michael Strahan also included Shawne Merriman. Even if Rivers, you say, is not as good in the playoffs, we would have been unstoppable. I truly believe we would have won 3 or 4 rings if we'd added Merriman to that crew, especially as Strahan aged out and Umenyiora and Tuck entered their prime. Merriman would have still been a young gun. So I know he ended up getting steroids and injuries and stuff, but it's possible it would have been different in New York. There wouldn't have been as much pressure on him learning from those dudes And Michael Strahan's a great guy. He would have told him not to do steroids most likely. So I think it could have gone different for both teams if that trade hadn't happened. And that value from 1-1 to 1-4, including an extra third and an extra first, is actually, from what we've seen in these drafts, pretty fair. And Manning does have the Manning name. So I actually could have seen the Chargers asking for even more. But again, the Chargers are willing to just move down and take a value as opposed to demanding too much and not getting the trade. So then we get a little more recent, what you guys are more familiar with. One of the most famous ones, a really good comp for this trade is Robert Griffin III. So he went second overall after Andrew Luck. The Redskins had the 6th pick, which they traded to the Rams. So they traded the 6th overall pick, the 39th overall pick, and their first the next 2 years. So basically 3 firsts and a second for RG3. RG3 comes out and takes the league by storm. People thought he should maybe go over Andrew Luck. So value-wise, it didn't seem that crazy. And of course, he gets hurt and it's awful. But so again, this is a really good one to comp this trade to. It's 3 firsts and a second for RG3. So let's remember that. 3 firsts and a second for RG3. In 2016, this is another good one to comp it to. And this shows how bad of a trade this was. And maybe that the Bears really didn't fleece them all that hard. The Rams went all the way from 15 to 1 to get Goff. They gave up, they also got back a 4th and a 6th, but they gave up the 15th in 2016, also gave up 2 seconds, a third, their 2017 first, and their 2017 third. So overall, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 thirds, but they moved up 14 selections. So if you compare it to what happened with the DJ Moore trade, it's 2 firsts, a second, and DJ Moore. DJ Moore was a first-round pick, or even if he wasn't, ends up being a first-round value. Is clearly a very good player. So it's basically the same as RG3. 3 firsts and a second to get the 1-1. So, but RG3, they went from 6 to 2. The Panthers went from 9 to 1. So you can actually argue that based on other ones, they could have gotten a little more, but then you do have to factor in who else was available in the draft and who else was available in free agency. The RG3 year, when the Rams had the 6th pick, Peyton Manning was a free agent. Alex Smith was a free agent, and Matt Flynn, Alex Smith was the 37th ranked free agent that year. Matt Flynn was the 16th ranked free agent that year after having his tremendous Week 17 coming in, throwing 4 or 5 touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers. So there were options available there. They didn't have to give all that to get RG3. Also, Rams had 1-2. The Redskins could have just traded for Sam Bradford. Probably wouldn't even have to give a first and let the Rams trade RG3. So the Redskins could have drafted a stud at 1-6 and just traded for Sam Bradford. So when you look at it that way, they kind of did overpay. And then the Goff trade, even though Goff wasn't that crazy of a talent, and we don't see it that way, Carson Wentz is a very toolsy player. Wentz is built like Josh Allen, 6'5", 240, can of an arm, good legs, went to a small school, very similar prospect, and he went 2nd overall after Goff. So if Goff was seen to be better than Wentz, there was clearly some talent with Goff. So for him to go for 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 thirds, and they moved up 14 selections, that's actually a pretty good value for the Rams. So again, Wentz, that very same draft, he went 1-2. They also get back a 4th, and then they gave up the 8th overall pick. So they moved up 6 selections, the 79th overall pick, the 100th overall pick, and then in 2017, a first and a second. So basically they gave up 2 firsts, a second, a third, and a 4th. It's not that bad. 2 firsts, a second, a third, and a 4th. It's really not that bad to move up 8 picks. I think the Wentz and Goff trades were actually pretty decent values. And if you look at who was available in free agency those years, that one, it wasn't quite as good. Oh, and also the draft. You have to look at the draft. So one reason they were so eager to move up in the draft there is that the next quarterbacks available were it was Christian Hackenberg, who was not talented at all. So in 2016 it was Christian Hackenberg. And then the free agents, I thought I was so on it. I thought I had everything down to a pad. I'd done all this research. Although if you've listened this far, I'm doing a great job anyways. I forget to say this every time. I know some of y'all listen. Please like and subscribe. It would do a lot to me. It helps the channel reach other people. So please, please, please like and subscribe. So yeah, in 2016, there was no, that's why I didn't write anything down. There was no free agent QB available, which is the reason that they felt that urgency to trade up, and the draft wasn't as exciting. So in 2012, the RG3 trade, another reason that was bad, I said they could have gotten for Sam Bradford. They also, so after RG3 and Luck, the next best QB was Whedon. Brandon Whedon was supposed to be an exciting talent, MLB pitcher who went 22nd overall. It's a little older, but if you're talking about signing a free agent, you can also sign Whedon. And then Brock Osweiler, 6'8", toolsy prospect, went 57th overall. And then Russell Wilson went 75th. So while Russell wasn't known to be as good as he was today, he was still a guy with the potential to play professional baseball, had a really good college career, and was a third-round pick. It's not like Dak Prescott, who was a fourth-round pick in a time of good scouting. A third-round pick in 2012 is like they knew he was good. So they knew Russ was good. That is another reason you could potentially say that the Redskins overpaid. And so then I'm about to get into this trade. But as I said, it's important to weigh who was available. So one of my favorite drafts to examine is my guy, Josh Allen, the 2018 draft. Baker went first overall. Saquon went second overall. Darnold went third overall. And then the Browns again took Denzel Ward at fourth overall. It was a great draft. Bradley Chubb went fifth. Quentin Nelson, a stud, went sixth. My guy Josh went seventh. Roquan Smith went eighth. McGlinchey went ninth. Josh Rosen went 10th. Minkah Fitzpatrick went 11th. The list goes on and on. I thought I wasn't going to need to go farther than that, but you know what? I'm going to go farther. There's more. There's my guy Tremaine Edmonds on the Bills, I believe, went like 15th. Vita Vea, one of the best nose tackles in the league, went 12. Jerron Payne, another great nose tackle, went 13. Marcus Davenport, extremely talented edge rusher on the Saints, went 14. They traded up 2 firsts to get him. 6'9" tackle Colton Miller goes 15. As I said, Tremaine Edmonds goes 16. Derwin James, the most dynamic safety in the league, comp to Sean Taylor, goes 17. Jair Alexander, one of the best corners, 18. Leighton Vander Esch goes 19. Frank Ragnow, great lineman for the Lions, goes 20. This just shows how much better scouting has gotten. Practically none of these dudes, except for Darnold and Rosen, are busts. And that's because they went and got them Baker, and they got them because they're quarterbacks. It's not necessarily their talent showed that. And then DJ Moore goes 24th in this draft. Calvin Ridley, 26. Rashad Penny's done well, 27. The other Edmonds brother goes 28. And then, of course, we all know Lamar Jackson goes 32. So this was an absolutely stacked draft. And if you're talking about what the Bears did, trading down from 1-1, this is an example of what they could have done. So I always say with 1-1, the Browns should have either gone potential and taken Saquon, or they should have they probably should have just traded it down, and they should have really analyzed what they needed. So they got Denzel Ward at number 4. If they wanted Ward at number 4, they could have, what they've done is trade down from 1-1 to maybe 1-3, and then actually trade back up and get Ward if they want to. But basically, they definitely should have traded down from Mayfield, because there isn't a huge difference in Mayfield, Darnold, Allen, and Rosen at the time of the draft. I know we all see Josh Allen's the best now. That's who I would have wanted back then. But when there's not a clear difference, it makes sense to make the trade. So that's why I believe that the Colts didn't make the trade this year. And then the Panthers, so the Bears value is fine. What the Bears did is very good for the Bears. They didn't need to get more. They did fine. Some people said they should have traded down with the Colts to 1-4 and then traded it down again to like 6 or 7 as opposed to 9, because they may not get as an exciting player at 9. They could have still gotten a bunch of future stuff and get a star. I actually probably would have liked that better for them, but you don't know that could happen. This offer's on the table, and you're also getting a bona fide star in DJ Moore. So now you've got Justin Fields set up with DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, and Darnell Mooney. None of them are alpha dog number 1 receivers, but all of them have the potential to be a 1A, 1B type guy. I always say like Michael Gallup's like that. He can go up and moss someone and be your number 1, but he's not going to moss Jalen Ramsey. So you take this team against Jalen Ramsey, Jalen Ramsey, being a big physical guy, is probably going to take out Chase Claypool, but then your number 2 corner isn't going to have someone for DJ Moore. If you happen to be a team with someone for DJ Moore, there's no way you have someone for Darnell Mooney. Cole Kmet solid as well. They've got 2 good running backs in Herbert Montgomery. So their offense is really set from this, and they have other picks. So I like it for the Bears. Unfortunately for the Panthers, I don't like it as much. They had the 9th pick. There are the 4 quarterbacks. And then there are 2 elite talents as well. Jalen Carter and Will Anderson both have been projected to go 1-1 at different times. So knowing that, that means there are essentially 6 elite top players. There's the 4 quarterbacks, and those 2 are going to go in the top 6. So if we know that, then that means if the Panthers wanted an elite player, all they really had to do was trade up from 9 to 6. Now, maybe they didn't want Anthony Richardson. Some teams are going to be out on him, but he comps to Cam Newton, who they had amazing success with. And the people are saying they're going to get CJ Stroud, so they want the big quarterback. They could have had him. Levis kind of plays like Josh Allen, really gritty warrior. And then Bryce Young is undersized. So it's possible they didn't want Bryce Young, so maybe they could have traded up to 5 or something. I really do think that they should have made a move like that. And the Seahawks at 5 don't need a quarterback. They have Geno, so they could have traded from 9 to 5. And then the Lions at 6 to 9 could have potentially done it. The Lions have Goff, so they could go quarterback or not. So they would need to leapfrog the Raiders at 7. And I guess potentially if they trade from 9 to 6, the Raiders could trade from 7 to 5 and leapfrog them. But the Cardinals have Kyler. So you know for sure there will be a QB available at 5. Because the Bears, if they trade to 4, so it's most likely there'll be a QB available at 6. So I do think if I was the Panthers, I would have traded up less and moved up to 5 to get the Seahawks and get the last man standing. If they are just 1,000% sure that CJ Stroud or Bryce is their guy, sure, that makes sense. But at the end of the day, I think a really good one to compare it to is the RG3 trade, because Goff isn't as exciting of a talent. You can't compare him to Manning or Vickkkk because they're Eli Manning and Michael Vick. I think RG3 is a fun one to compare him to. He's really exciting like these other prospects, but didn't have that for sure factor. He was skinnier, did getting hurt, and didn't have the huge pedigree. So again, RG3 goes for 3 firsts and a second, which is essentially what they traded for because DJ Moore is a first-round pick. But again, they moved from 9 to 1. So from that point of view, you can argue that, it's not that bad of a value. That's what RG3 was traded for. But again, RG3 is a more exciting talent. There's a reason he was like Andrew Luck, some decide is the best prospect ever with this combination of being bigger than Peyton Manning, being smarter than almost any quarterback ever going to Stanford. So if you're talking about RG3 being up there, none of these quarterbacks in this draft can even whiff that region of RG3 and Luck. Therefore, 3 firsts and a 3 firsts essentially with DJ Moore and a second is a bit steep. But again, at the end of the day, if the Panthers really wanted a signal caller, I think they should have traded to 5 or 3. It's possible 5 is too steep. They don't want the 4th selection, but if they trade to 3 for the Cardinals, there has to be one of those 3 dudes they want. You know, there's one guy they want in most likely Stroud. And then let's say they probably would like Levis. Levis has all the tools of an NFL quarterback. So if those guys go first and second, and Levis isn't projected to go second, Bryce Young's projected to go second. So that means they would likely get Levis or Anthony Richardson at 3. And I think that would make more sense. I don't believe if people are all not sure, basically I'm like flip-flopping, it's like, which one do they want? It's like, it's not that clear to me. So I don't think it's worth giving up the 3 first and the second. That being said, I did get the extra capital from the Christian McCaffrey trade, but you've now traded a receiver. Their defense has so much depth and their offense is inept. They have Brian Burns, who's incredible. Maybe it would have made more sense to trade like a Yetur Gross-Matos or a Derek Brown as the blue chip player as opposed to DJ Moore, because now they're going to have a quarterback come out and not have a receiver to throw to, and you can't tank because you traded your first. So if you did want to trade to 1-1, maybe it would have made more sense to trade your 25 and 26 first, hold on to your 2024 ones if you trade DJ Moore so you can tank. So also tanking might not be an option because the Bucs just lost Tom Brady. I know the Saints got Derek Carr, but that's still not a powerhouse. And that division's just not that exciting. So they were competing last year. So it is really fun. It's really, really fun. It's so exciting. Again, I didn't expect to do an NFL podcast for a while, but overall, I do think the Panthers could have done it a little better. Kind of like how I say with the McCaffrey trade that the Niners could have traded for Saquon for cheaper. If they wanted an elite signal caller for the future, there are other ways to do it. They also are kind of a win now team with that defense. They could have potentially gone for a car. And then also, what am I talking about? I can't believe I almost forgot him. I'm not a big fan, but Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is a known quantity. These dudes all have question marks. You gave up 2 firsts, a second, and DJ Moore for the right for 1-1. Whereas Lamar Jackson, you just have to give him the giant contract, but then you give up 2 firsts. I know it's a giant contract, but there aren't that many people they're paying. They could have kept DJ Moore. So honestly, if you're willing to give up that much and you keep your pick, so they would have had Lamar Jackson, DJ Moore, 1-9. They could have gotten out and taken an exciting receiver at 1-9. There's tons of dudes. There's Jordan Addison, who's electric, who would pair really, really well with DJ Moore. You get another Ohio State tackle with Paris Johnson. Broderick Jones is supposed to be really good. Jackson Smith and Jabba had the #1 3-cone time and the #1 shuttle in the entire draft and was said to be the best Ohio State receiver in the past couple of years. I really don't believe that was the best way for them to handle it. I'd forgotten about the Lamar part. If I were them, that's what I would have done. I would have signed Lamar to the exorbitant contract. They don't have that many players to sign. They lose 2 firsts as opposed to 2 firsts, a second, and DJ Moore, and they get a known commodity. So also, Panthers have been a boring team for years. Ever since Cam Newton, they haven't been fun. So Lamar instantly spices it up. That's what they really should have done. They should have just signed Lamar Jackson, but I guess the owners are wanting to stick together and not overpay people. But who cares about the other owners if you're the team with Lamar Jackson? So shout out to TRX. Hope to be working for them again in the future. I've been in talks with that. And of course, I hope you guys enjoyed the combine. Much love. Thanks for listening and subscribing.